Hey guys, hope you're doing amazing tonight. I'm glad you all could join us. For anyone that's going to be watching this later, thank you so much for taking the time to watch it as well. Elders Homestead, welcome. Lady Casca, hope you have a good night. Not sure if you're still here or not. Jean Marc, welcome as well. David Knight and Pedmar. Jean Marc again. Marilyn, hope you guys are all doing amazing tonight. So glad you guys could drop in, take the time from your schedules to, spend it here with me. I was on another live the other night, Gray Man Prepping, and he was talking about an incident he had, went into a grocery store, I believe it was, and got talking to a lady about prepping and stuff. Hey, Gardner Josh, welcome. Glad you could join us. So he was in the grocery store and got talking to this lady, he said, about prepping. And her automatic response, like some people do, is, oh, you're freaking out about end of days and that kind of thing. And I think that happens to a lot of people. I'm pretty sure some people who have prepped and that sort of thing run into it. You probably even run into it in the homestead community where some people are like, oh, why do you need that much food? Why can't you just buy it from the grocery store? That sort of thing. So it got me kind of thinking about how I got into it and what made me get started on prepping, why I want to homestead, why I am the way I am, I guess. So living a rogue life. Welcome, Patrick. Welcome as well. Glad you guys could join us. Oh, Lady Casca will be here for a bit. Welcome. Thanks for sticking around for a bit. So I think we all kind of have events in our lives that shape us, point us in a direction that we think we need to go, or change us in some way that have an impact on us. And I want to talk about kind of three that I had that kind of shaped who I am and why I began prepping. I think that when you say prepping kind of thing, it kind of, a lot of people give it that, oh, like I said before, that negative context. But I think that, I don't know whether it's movies or the media, they kind of do it a disservice. Rebel Canners, thanks for joining us. The media especially, and Hollywood especially, I want to say most of Hollywood, in my opinion, get stuff wrong, get stuff far-fetched, always has to have, someone that's the bad guy. So they kind of play it as, you've all seen those movies where, the military colonels are the bad guy, the leadership is the bad guy, or, rogue unit went bad, or, the evil doctor who's controlling everything. And there's always someone who's bad in the media and the movies. So we've all seen those movies where there's, some backwoods guy prepping, and he's got the loose screw, and he just shoots everyone that's on their property, and the cops got to get him, So I think in general, the general public, when they watch these movies, it's kind of influenced their thoughts, and it kind of gets that bad taste in their mouth about when you say prepping, which isn't good at all. So I think everyone needs to do it. I mean, even on government websites, they have web pages that promote it. The Canadian government, you go onto their website and there's lots of things of how to be prepared for natural disasters, how to put together a 72-hour bag, lots of stuff like that on, I would say it's probably on most government websites that get into prepping and get into preparedness and get you getting a bag ready with valuable things. So at a moment's notice, you can grab that bag and get out of your house or get out of the situation you're in. Ricky Ventures, glad you could join us. Billy Lee, glad you could join us. Brenda Baker, thanks for coming in. Yeah, and like in the chat, like you've all seen those movies. You've all seen the media coverage where everyone's portrayed as the bad guy that's the prepper. It's that's kind of situation. So some of the things that I remember growing up and shaping my life to be more prepared is in 1985 in Barrie, Ontario. I was living in this little town called Bond Head, Ontario. It's north of Toronto. I think we had like population of 500 or something like that. It's just south of Barrie. But an F4 tornado went through, hit Barrie, and destroyed tons of homes. Destroyed the racetrack that was up there. There's a horse racing track that was up there. Don't know if it still is, but it destroyed that. It did a ton of damage. There were a bunch of deaths. And I think at the same time in the US and other parts of Canada, there were, I want to say, 14 or so different tornadoes. It was a big deal back then that, so many tornadoes hit, and it was just a disaster. But we were able to go up, I think it was a week later or something like that. We went up to visit, and we drove through because we were going to see friends of my parents. And it was unreal to go through and see what a tornado was capable of. Throwing vehicles, throwing boats, throwing trees, tearing a strip through a forest like someone had clear cut it. Houses demolished, and then the next house, 10 feet away is not touched at all. It's just crazy. So it really impacted me and got me thinking back then, how would you prepare for that? How would you be coping with something like that? Blind Guy, his wife, their life. Thanks for coming in. Who else did we have? Emma, thanks for coming in. Sunny's Place, Dee's Homestead, Paul Andre. Welcome, guys. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. So that was one of the events that kind of struck me and got me thinking about it. The second one was 1998 in Quebec. There was an ice storm here. I wasn't in Quebec at the time. I was still back in Ontario. But it went, I think it started and went for about 3 or 4 weeks. There was 4 million people affected by it with loss of power. So it wasn't just Quebec. It was actually Maine and northern parts of the US in that area, because they were getting their power from Quebec at the time. So it affected Maine, power blackouts. Most of Quebec was out of power. They said 3 weeks after the initial storm, 150,000 people were still without power. They had people that died from hypothermia. I would assume I don't know whether it was old age homes or the elderly that, were stuck in their homes, didn't have anyone to contact, that kind of thing where, maybe they didn't have a fireplace. They didn't have wood stove to be able to heat the house. So there was quite a few people that died of hypothermia in that situation. And I remember that because there were tons of hydro workers from Ontario that actually went over to Quebec to help. They volunteered their time and took off. And I think they volunteered their time. I don't remember whether they were paid or, just got in their trucks and came over and spent a month or so repairing the infrastructure. There was hydro towers that collapsed, wires that were collapsed. Basically, the entire infrastructure in Quebec was damaged by the ice storm. It was just crazy. And, thinking that, that could happen almost anywhere in Canada. Yeah, exactly. Natural disasters will get you thinking about it. It's just, those kinds of things that really impact you. Yeah, hurricane, tornadoes, those are other ones that are really crazy. The the third one that really got me thinking was I had moved in Ontario and I was living, I want to say 2 kilometers, 1 kilometer to 2 kilometers away from a railroad track. And in the town, 20 minutes away from us, there was a train derailment. And if I remember correctly, it was either like hazardous stuff or it was something anyway. They had to evacuate. It was either like a kilometer or 2 kilometers, something like that, around the site. So as soon as the train derailed and emergency services got there, they basically went house to house and said, get out. So being in a situation like that where, you could be having a bath or a shower or eating dinner, doing homework with your kids, watching TV, and then all of a sudden you get the knock on the door and you're told to leave. I can imagine there's people that have had that happen from forest fires or other things like that where it's almost instantaneous and starts to maybe the forest fire changed direction or something happened. But to be evacuated in that situation where, it's a knock on the door and get out, you better have some stuff with you and prepared to leave. So I went kind of through some of the stuff and made a list of kind of some of the stuff that, a lot of us or most of us might have to deal with at some point. And it's kind of crazy because it can happen at any time. And some of the things you wouldn't even think about really until it happened. Mudbrooker, welcome. Bountiful Harvest Abby, welcome. Sean in Alaska. Everybody's joining us tonight. This is awesome. So glad you guys could make it. Great Depression influenced my parents. Hard time for me was not having a case of beer and a tank of gas. There's quite a difference in, what a lot of our parents and our grandparents had to deal with in some cases, what they've gone through, what they prepared for. I mean, I remember my grandmother, she didn't have a lot, but she always had some extra stuff stashed away just in case. So they went through and didn't waste anything. They didn't throw anything out. They always got it fixed. They always repaired things. It was kind of a different mindset in that case. So, and that's just it for so many people. There's different things that affect everyone depending on where you're located. I kind of made a list of stuff, but it's based on my quick thoughts from kind of US and Canada, since that's where I guess most of us are from. Far North Home, thanks for joining us. Who else did we see come in? Three Feathers Homestead, welcome. Glad you could join us. Yeah, we got everyone from Canada and Alaska and the US, and it's awesome. Yeah, exactly. It's crazy if the power goes down, how it can affect you and how it affects the power for not just that location, but other locations, other people. So the Quebec ice storm, Maine didn't have the ice, or the other states in that area. I can't think of any. I'm so bad with my US geography, but the other states in that area didn't face the ice storm. But because they were getting their power from Quebec at the time, they were affected by the power outage. So it might not happen in your exact area, but it could affect you. Yeah. Yeah, it was funny. I've been watching what is that, homestead rescue. And there's some stories on there too about, homesteaders uh, down in California, I think it was, where forest fires they were dealing with, we're going one way, and then all of a sudden the wind changed and suddenly it started coming the other way. And when they thought they were safe, suddenly now they're in danger. It's just crazy. So, some of the things that I was going through, like I just said, forest fires, floods, tornadoes, hurricanes, tsunamis, train derailments, ice storms, snowstorms, power outages, plane crash, avalanche, earthquakes, vehicle crashes. There's stuff that, so you think a car accident or a plane crash, not a big deal, right? Well, if you're driving along a highway in winter and a car crashes or a truck crashes and there's a pileup, you're going to be stuck there a while unless there's a way through. So I don't know if you, in your vehicle, do you pack extra set of clothes for everybody, maybe even a sleeping bag, water, food, shovels, lights, that kind of thing, where, if you're going to have to stay there for a while, are you going to be warm enough? There was a situation here in Quebec City. Was it Quebec City? Somewhere here in Quebec too, last year, where we had tons of snow all come in around 24 hours, I think it was. And people were stuck on the highways. They couldn't get out. People had to go rescue them in snowmobiles because there was no way for them to get out. The plows couldn't get through. So it's something that, if you're driving, if you're traveling, how are you going to deal with that if there is ice blocking the highway, snow blocking the highway, a car accident blocking the highway? So accidents, which involves like the train derailment as well. And then airplane crashes. I've seen tons of spots where, the plane hits something, someone's house. They come home and there's a plane in their house. Their house is completely gone. What do? Do you have extra ID on you? Do you have some cash on you? Is there somewhere you can go? Do you have extra clothes? How are you going to cope with that situation? And I mean, the chances of that happening are so slim, so minute. It's crazy. But there are people who have come home to their house being gone. So it's a weird situation when you think about it. Yeah. That there's been a few of those stories. It's crazy. Well said, Forge and Farm. Glad you guys could join us as well. Yes. And that was one of the things that, I won't get into doing a bug out bag or a bug out box or, you know, that kind of thing. I think there's lots of videos out there. I could always go into it at some point, but there's enough videos out there that you can get an idea of what you should be packing. But having multiple copies of your IDs is a huge benefit. Keep them in your vehicle, keep them in a backpack, keep them in a safe, keep them anywhere that you can access stuff if something happens, so that you lose your wallet or something. If you're going to go into the bank, well, you'd better have ID to make sure you can still get replacement cards and that kind of thing. Yeah, exactly. Learning survival skills, learning bushcraft, that kind of stuff is always handy in situations. I want to say, for the people who are stranded here in Quebec on the highway in the snowstorm, knowing some survival skills might save your life. Whereas, you don't want to be running an oil lamp or a candle inside the vehicle with the windows rolled up and that kind of thing. You want to be able to have some I wouldn't say common sense, but some understanding of how things work in those situations. Yeah, yeah, it's funny when, I do the videos for our channel, and my thought process has always been, if people are homesteading, there's only so much they want to learn. But then I started watching that show, and I realized there's so many people out there who buy a piece of property and get into it and have no idea what they're doing. They're kind of flying by the seat of their pants and just learning it. So I think a lot of the YouTube videos are actually very helpful for those people. Yeah, common sense is a correct term. However, I think we've all said that common sense ain't that common. So, yeah. So some of the other stuff like the forest fires, the floods, ice storms, snowstorms, hurricanes, tornadoes. I think a lot of people have experienced that kind of stuff or know someone that has. And for us, it's not only preparing for that in our house, but we do it in our vehicles as well. So, like I said before, I kind of change my truck up every now and then, depending on the situation, the seasons, where I'm going to, if it's, driving back and forth to work, or if I'm going back to Ontario or on a road trip, that sort of thing. I'll change up what's in the vehicle based on that sort of stuff. And again, you know, water, food. I've got my stove, a little stove, and cups and bowls, equipment like tools, shelter. I've got like a mini tarp tent. So not only can I fit in it, but I can stretch it out and it'll fit a few of us underneath it as well. It's stuff like that that not just in a bug out bag where, say, you're in the office and suddenly you have to get out of the office or something like that, or you're in a shopping mall and something happens and you need to get out, you've got it with you. But in most cases, you should be able, I would think, to make it back to your vehicle where you can have sort of a secondary stash of stuff. So, kind of layering those preparations. So, your house is basically your main one. You've got your vehicles, you've got a bag. So, it all helps for some situations where we're on a homestead, or others of you that have animals. It's a bit harder, and how you're going to make your preps for your animals. So, with all of that kind of stuff too, all of these things that can happen anywhere, um, avalanches, that landslides, they cut some trees to because they're overhanging the road or something like that, and you can always get some landslides happening. Sometimes landslides will happen further up, so they clear cut something for lumber, and that comes right down, say, a mountain or a hill. You get too much rain, you get the landslides. You get too much snow, you get the avalanche. You get some rocks build up or erosion, you get it. So again, that can block highways, can damage facilities. So there's a lot of things that can happen with without any notice whatsoever. And I think being prepared in that regard is a wise decision for all of us. And having the media and the Hollywood, uh, the film industry, the movie industry, demonize that is such a disservice. It I don't like it at all, just to put it mildly. So, will it grow? Thanks for joining us. LP, glad you could join us. Creekside Maples, welcome. Drops Family Homestead, welcome. Hope you guys are all doing well. I hope I didn't miss anyone coming in. If I did, I'm sorry. But yeah, those those are kind of my thoughts, especially after you know hearing feedback from people and you know, oh, waiting for end of days. It's not about the end of days. It's not about zombies. It's about natural disasters. It's about an accident. Hell, it's even about losing your job. If you have some cash in the bank or you have something set aside, you don't want to be spending all of that on food. You want to have your food canned and put away. You want to have a garden. You want to have, if you have the ability to have animals, then animals as well. So that if you lose your job, you don't have to spend all that money that maybe you've got stacked away for buying food. You can use it to pay your bills and use your canned food in your garden to be able to to be able to sustain you for a month or 2 months or 3 months while you look for a job. I mean, that's happened to everyone, right? Collecting seeds is an amazing thing. It's one of those things we finally started doing this year, dedicated, and we want to make sure we have enough as well. We saw it with the situation that happened in the last couple of years where nothing was in stock. So trying to buy some of that stuff was crazy. it it is about the zombies too. And I myself like using that term just because, you know, in some cases it makes it more fun for some people. So if you can get the kids even thinking about, prepping for zombies and all that, get them into the mindset to start and then work on explaining, you know, here's where you can use it. Here's some situations where this might be helpful. But I totally use the zombies. Exactly. Hey, Diggs Homestead or Diggs Outdoors, welcome. Glad you could join us. But yeah, like I said, use the zombies if it helps. Um, but if you get to that point where, you know, you're putting the chainsaw on your shotgun and barbed wire all around your vehicle, you might be doing people a disservice, right? You never know. It might get more people excited in prepping too. Hard to say. 35 pounds of pork sausages. Nice. That is awesome. Self sufficiency is the way to go. It makes a huge difference. I think everyone should be doing as much gardening, as much raising livestock as possible. Uh, if you're in an apartment and can grow on the windowsills or the balcony, just having, say, 3 days extra food is a huge thing. If you have a power outage or, you know, you can't go into the grocery store and use your debit card because the power is out. If you can't get cash out of the bank machine and you don't have cash on you, having even 3 days food is a huge help. Nice. Yeah, we're working on 1 year's worth of meat right now. And this year, I figure we grew about 6 months worth of veggies. So we're going to see how that does. And probably February, we'll reassess where we are and kind of plan the garden to make up for the difference, I guess. So if we eat everything all at once, we'll plant more, say, carrots, which I think we've already gone through about half our carrots already. So we're definitely doing more carrots next year. Big difference between rabid survivalism based on paranoid fantasy and being ready for reality. Fortunately, the latter isn't being lumped in with form as much anymore. It's true. It Thankfully there's more and more people getting into prepping, more people being prepared, more people, I think, homesteading, more people doing survival gardens, that sort of thing. So it's, and you even have, like I said before, the government websites saying that you need to be prepared. You should have 72 hours gear in a bag. I'd suggest, well, I wouldn't suggest more in a bag, but I'd suggest a lot more in your vehicle or in your house, ready to go. And that's awesome because, again, like I did in the hot tub talking about the internet went out here for half a day. I'm pretty sure bank machines, if you lose the internet, bank machines might not be working. I don't know. Hard to say, but definitely won't work in power outages. So having some money stashed away that, you can go into the grocery store or go into get gas and be able to use cash makes a huge difference. More and more about the zombies. Yeah, yeah. What did I miss? There was something I missed. Did I? Talking about this. There's a lot. Yeah, there's so much food out there now that's, processed. It's just horrible. I like getting back to more of the food that we grow in the garden, more of the whole grains for making bread and that kind of stuff. It feels so much better. Me and you Acres, glad you could join us. Hope everything is going well. I don't think that's odd at all. I think that's and that was the other thing. You just mentioned the chainsaw. Um there's a lot of the times, it's good to have a chainsaw in your vehicle or some way of cutting a tree. In the case of tornadoes, hurricanes, tsunamis, um, that sort of thing, you're probably going to run into a tree across the road. I ran into one coming home from work last year. Thankfully, there was guys in front of me. Basically, if I remember correctly, I think it was like hydro or something in the vehicle ahead of me, but it was an old rotten tree. And I guess its time was done and it just fell right across the road before we got onto the highway. And thankfully, those guys actually had chainsaws in their hydro truck. They went out, cut it all up into pieces, and moved it off the road. But having something like that in your vehicle to be able to move trees out of the way, otherwise, again, you're going to be stuck there, not being able to go forward. You can always go back, but sometimes, that's a longer route, or if you're in the middle of nowhere, it might add an hour or two to your journey. Yeah, again, keeping some cash around is a great idea. Something you'll be able to pay for gas, pay for food. Maybe you need some extra clothes if you're not in your house. If you lost your house to a flood or fire or something, having a bit of extra cash with you in your vehicle or in your bag can make a big difference. We go to the grocery store a bit for the kids. We get some snacks for lunches and that kind of thing. And we still rely on the grocery store for milk. But spring, we've got the goats planned. So that is going to be what we're hoping is all our milk, all our cream, all our yogurt, all our cheese. We'll see how that does. It's going to be a lot of work, but should be good. Oh, exactly. That's just it. We find that we really want to grow more carrots, more potatoes, more turnips, mainly. The carrots and potatoes, especially, store amazing. The turnips not so bad, but not as good as the carrots and the potatoes. And we eat them all the time. For us, it's one of those mainstays. We like it, and it's kind of what we rely on for most of our meals. Oh, that's crazy. That's strange and weird. It it's funny how um I saw another story today, and the more they update stuff, I want to say did make stuff more digital, make stuff, you know, bring in more technology, the more it actually hurts us and the more we should be prepared for other eventualities. The story I was reading today was in the UK, and they had a storm come through. And what had happened is instead of using the old, I guess, landlines for phones, they've started switching everybody over to digital. The VoIP, VoIP, I think it is, in the UK. So they've changed these, taken people off of landlines. And what's happened is the storm went through, power went out. Well, now you have all these elderly folk in their homes that are now on a digital phone, and they can't call for help. They can't call anyone because the phone doesn't work because it's now digital instead of a landline. Yep. Yeah, that's a great idea. I haven't started to do that yet. I probably will soon. I just haven't. There's been so many other things I've been focusing on. And I think if it gets so bad, well, you hear of Venezuela and stuff where they're doing that. Lebanon, I think they are as well. If it gets that bad, it's it's going to be pretty bad, I think. I don't remember that, but I know there's been cases of that happening. And recently we saw it in British Columbia there with the flooding. Vancouver was cut off from the mainland. And again, you know, rationing gasoline, rationing food at grocery stores. They can't get around it. It's pretty devastating. And if you don't have the help or people coming to your aid, it can go bad pretty quick. Yeah, and there's lots of ways to travel too. I mean, bikes are a good one. Horses, I'm not a fan of horses. I worked 13 years managing a horse farm. So it I have a love-hate relationship with horses. But they're handy. They're good. They're just expensive and require a lot of feed, and they can be fragile. So, yep, definitely. It's one of those things that I think everyone should have, even, you know, if you're not on a homestead, if you have a property that has trees on it, then you should have some form of cutting the trees, even if it's a small battery operated one. I've seen some good reviews on those. I'm thinking of picking up one of those small battery ones myself for the truck or Bridget's car, or even just to have around here just to cut some of the smaller trees so we don't have to use the big chainsaws. Blind guy, his wife, their life. Thanks for listening. No problem at all. There's a lot of things that people I don't think have really thought about. I mean, one for us is forest fire, since we back onto a forest. Again, the ice storms, the snowstorms. But even without that, when you think about someone in a vehicle crashing and taking out a hydro line that goes to your place, and suddenly you're without power until they get that up and running again. It's not a big deal, but I mean, for most of us, we can do without power for a little while. But what if you're elderly and you have an oxygen machine, or some of those home ventilators, or anything like that, where you're kind of relying on that electricity? Being out for a little while because of a car accident would really be bad. Yeah, this year we started, actually, we got a book on medicinal herbs, and we actually started collecting a lot of herbs around the property and drying them, and we'll be using those for a lot of different stuff this year. One of my favorite cool things is, no, it was right there and it's gone. But it's a salad burnet. So it's a replacement for parsley, but it's also a hemostatic agent. So you basically crumple up the leaves and throw it into a cut, and it helps stop the bleeding. So stuff like that's really cool as well. Oh, learning to use a chainsaw, I think everyone should do. I mean, even if you have access to one of the little battery ones or can get one, I mean, they're just as dangerous, but there might be less intimidation to be able to use it. Bridget actually has one that is a steel, but it's assisted. So with a regular pull chainsaw, you're pulling everything. This one actually has, I think it's a spring or something inside. So as you pull, that spring actually helps spin to get it started. So it's really neat that way. That's awesome. We want to look at getting either wind or solar. Not so much for the house. We want to get the house done eventually, but we run so much stuff here that we'd have to get like one of those big 10 kilowatt windmills and put it out the back or something, which I'm thinking about, but I haven't priced them out yet. But I'm thinking, some sort of solar or wind to be able to run heaters and lights for the greenhouse, for the garage, the well pump. If the power goes out, we want to be able to use the well pump to get water. So lots of getting off grid is always good. It takes a lot, though. We're trying to figure it out, and it takes a lot of energy to run a house completely. So, because we have the 2 freezers, 2 fridges, I'd like to run the TVs and the lights, and we also have baseboard heat, which probably sucks a ton of juice. We have the 3 fireplaces, but running 3 fireplaces to heat a house is a lot of work. So if we could have that off grid, that would be awesome. Yeah, exactly. And I'm pretty sure like if stuff goes that bad, the horses will become a lot more valuable, a lot more useful. Get the big Clydes and Percherons for doing a lot of the heavy lifting, pulling, that sort of thing. Yeah, and that's just it. There's lots of other ways. You know, winter you can ski. If you have bikes for summer, it's awesome. That's good to know. Yeah. Again, I'd like to have something too, just as a backup and be able to do some of the smaller trees when we're, trimming and limbing and that sort of thing. Yep. So in my truck, actually, that's one thing I can mention too. In my truck, I actually took it into my old garage and I got to install a second battery. So they put in the little solenoid or something. I don't know. I'm not very mechanical. So what they did is they put in a second battery, ran the wires from the alternator to both batteries, but there's a cutoff on it. So when the second battery is fully charged, it doesn't get any more juice. And then there's cables going from that second battery to the bed of my truck. So in the bed of my truck, I run a small inverter, a 2000-watt inverter that's in there. And I can also hook up my one freezer fridge. I've got an Engel off-road fridge. So it's pretty cool because it'll go on about a 30-degree angle and still function. And that runs off of basically the battery. And I think it pulls about 9 amps. I don't know what that means, but I know it's not a lot. So I can run that fridge. I've ran it for 4 days in the truck without killing the battery. I can start the truck again after that 4 days. I've just like without running the truck for 4 days, that fridge still ran, which was really nice. So it's something like that's a huge help to be able to have the inverter and have power into the bed of your truck. And I'm sure you could do it with a vehicle as well, like a car running something to the trunk. There's probably a lot less space in the front of the car to put the second battery and stuff, but it's really helpful. And it's good to think about setting vehicles up for that because, like I said before, too, if you've got a tree across the road, if you've got a landslide, if you've got a flood, most of those will stop a vehicle. But even if you've got some four-wheel drive capability or got some extra inches on your vehicle or have a heavy duty bumper on your vehicle to be able to push something as well, it's always handy. That's a good idea too, is like if you're off grid, if something gets damaged, say the windmill gets blown over by too much wind or a tree falls on it or something like that, it's always good to have backup. So if you're off grid but still hooked up to the grid, that is a good idea too. Scott, glad you could join us rambling with the Brahms. Good to see you here. I'm probably way behind in the chat too, aren't I? I think I am. I'm looking at the times now. That's crazy. Oops. Get to rambling about stuff. Yeah, and handsaws are good too. I mean, if we ever get to the point where we don't have um, gas, we're going to have to be using handsaws. There's probably some big ones out there too that are battery power operated too, I think, eh? I haven't looked at them, so I saw, who was it? Someone I saw running one that it looked like it was almost one-handed. Maybe it was in a magazine catalog for steel, and it was like just a short one-handed one, which looked really cool. But I've seen the other ones that are bigger as well. I'm skipping some of the comments just to see if I can catch up a little bit here, guys. Honey Badger's Homestead. Good to see you. Glad you're doing well. Yeah. Oh, exactly. That's just it. And everyone has to be prepared in different ways as well, because some of the things I face, people down in, say, Texas might not face, and they're facing other things that, us up here wouldn't face. So, and again, if you're running off grid or solar wind, what you're using makes a big difference on what you need. Yep. Yep. Definitely small steps. Most of us have to do small steps to be able to get where we want to be. But again, as long as you're taking those small steps, you're achieving something, you're getting there. You could always do that. I mean, you can hook up ox, donkeys. Donkeys might be too stubborn, but you can definitely get some animal powered stuff going too if you really need to. Yeah, lots of comments too about the Amish. There's I'd really love to study what they do a lot more. There's been so many things that, I want to be able to learn just about homesteading as well, and being able to do stuff around the farm here where, say building my own gates where I don't have to go buy a gate, doing fencing that, say, I don't have to go buy page wire fence. We started using pine trees we cut down to do a fence to try and keep the dog on our property. It's not working well, but that kind of stuff. I would have to get someone up with me to chat about solar, wind power, that sort of stuff. I am not knowledgeable on it at all. And every time someone starts talking to me about it, my brain kind of goes numb, I guess, because they start talking about voltage and amperage and how much power something uses, and then startup power, say startup power for the fridge. But then once it's running, it boggles my mind when I start to think about it, of, all the stuff you have to factor in and keep track of to be able to build a system that works for what you need it to work for. I'd love to chat about that and actually find out more about all that stuff. Harvey Black, good to see you. Glad you could join us. Yeah. And again, some wind and solar do better in some places than other places. Like here, we'd be okay with solar, not great, but if we put up a windmill, we'd probably be laughing. Jean-Marc, if you're asking me, we've got three of them. So there's my big one, my farm boss, three something, 391, 395, three something like that. So I've got a 18-inch bar for it that I use for cutting the trees, and then I've got a 20-inch bar for it that I use for milling with the Alaska mill. Bridget has a smaller one, the assisted one, that I want to say it's like 16-inch, which I like using for limbing and stuff. And then we've got another one, an older steel that I think is 16-inch as well, but it's an older model that's a bit heavier, but it runs like a charm. Take care, guys. Hope you have a great night. Hopefully this got you thinking about some stuff that you need to be prepared for and need to look for and work on. Hickorycroft, welcome. Glad you guys could join us. You guys always have such insightful stuff too, and you kind of go really deep into stuff, which is awesome. And again, I still want to do like a round table with you guys and some others that we could really talk about different stuff and discuss different stuff like this. But yeah, taking small steps, making sure you're on that goal and going in the right direction, being able to manage it. Not like us. We kind of sometimes just jump into stuff sometimes, like the cows and that, and then realize that, we need a cattle chute. Oh, we need an extra field. Oh, we better get this done. Oh, so sometimes it's better to take it slow and get some stuff done ahead of time that you prepare for, like we're doing with the goats, preparing, getting stuff built up, and then we'll be ready to go. It's funny that you mentioned the girls. When I was back in Ontario, one of the things I used to do with my kids is I'd actually use the zombie thing and get them to work on building their own little bug out bags for themselves. So I had three girls and a son. So they would put together stuff for themselves, and I'd wake them up like half an hour or an hour earlier, sometimes in the morning, or after they'd go to bed, I'd wake them up and we'd actually walk through the subdivision over to a park. There'd be a park bench there, or like one of those shelters with a bunch of picnic tables in. So I'd ask them to kind of show me what they packed in their bag to be prepared for the zombies and stuff. And it was great because every time we did it, they got a little better at it. And the first time it was like Grace, my youngest, packed a teddy bear and that kind of stuff, which when you're packing bug out bags, you don't really think about kind of stuff like that. You're thinking about matches and knife and all that. But if you have young kids, you want something for them to be able to comfort them as well. Something like their blanket or a stuffed animal or a doll or something where, that will help calm them down in situations where, your mind is on other stuff. Yeah, some of those old belt run equipments are wild. Like the size of the belts are crazy too. Really like loose. Almost looks like they're flopping around, but they run great. Some are like the tight ones and all that, but I'm thinking like the old ones where they run them off a tractor to a pump and they've got this big floppy belt going. And it's funny because I actually need someone to do that. I need someone to, you know, sit me down and really go through it and put it down on paper, because when someone talks about it, it just kind of goes in one ear and out the other ear. But if we went around and said, okay, so here's this, here's how this works, here's where you need to put this, and it, that would be a big help for myself. Yes and no. I mean, I've looked through some. Maybe I'll try again and look through some of that stuff. I'm not bad with some electrical stuff and some mechanical stuff, but getting into the advanced stuff is above my head, and I just get confused. And um, it usually I start daydreaming and thinking about other stuff too. So, well, that's just it. I think like when they're talking about freezers and fridges and pumps and that kind of stuff, it does take a bit more power to get them going and then to keep them running. Yep, baby steps. But you get in there and you get going on that path and you keep moving towards your goal. As long as you're moving forward. Awesome. Thanks so much. Yeah, I know there's some other lives starting, and it's getting close to my bedtime. So I'll probably jump off here as well. Wrap it up soon. They can be awesome, but yeah, they can be stubborn as well. Nice. Yeah, I think something like that would be great. Emma, have a great night. I will do. Nice. That's good to know. I'd probably get the 16-inch, uh, just because something smaller. Here I go saying smaller again, but um, I love my big one, but I do need something smaller and lighter to be able to do more limbing. It would be so nice. The Elder's Homestead. Oh, good that you listen. No problem whatsoever. Uh so for the goats, I think we're pretty much set on French Alpines. Uh for a couple of reasons. One, they have French in the name, and we're in Quebec, and Bridget's French. Kind of like me with the Highland cows being Scottish, So I don't really some yeah, how to put this. Sometimes we don't really factor in a whole lot of things. Um, it's funny when we listen to Hickory Croft talking, they really think through how they plan their animals and what they need. And for us, it's like, oh yeah, that would kind of match what we have. We don't know much about it, but it'd be good. So anyway, the French Alpines, we did research a little bit. They're good in our weather. The milk is very similar to dairy milk. So for us to have three boys here drinking tons of milk, it would be good to have something that's very similar to the dairy. So that was one of the key factors. And again, being able to have them in our weather is good. Yeah. You gotta find ways to get the kids motivated and get them involved in stuff. Definitely. That's cool. I think some of that old stuff is so awesome. The fact that, it still works and still is very effective. I'd like to pick up more older equipment too, just to have around the farm to be able to use if we need it. There's like, say, a threshing machine or something like that, or a mill, some just things like that. Apple press. I know there's modern ones and all that, but some of the old ones are really good too. Take care. Have a great night. Yes. Merry Christmas to you as well. If we don't see everybody before, take care. Have a great night, guys. I think I'll be wrapping it up here too. So just gonna try and finish getting through the chat. So that's the other thing is, with soda cans and pipes and that kind of stuff, you can also make passive solar system. So I'd love to do that with our chickens and rabbits and stuff as well, and probably some bigger units for the house to be able to heat air or heat liquid to be able to cycle it through the house. Some are big, some aren't that big. It's just, you know, holding a big chainsaw and using a big heavy chainsaw to try and do limbing is awkward and it wears you out, especially me. Even that would be awesome. Something like that would be awesome for trimming up, because what we do is we'll drop the pines, and with the pines and evergreens, there's so many little limbs all the way up it. So just taking the chainsaw and running it all the way up the trunk, and then we use that trunk for either rails for the fencing, post, structural supports, uh, milling for boards, that kind of thing. So, and getting rid of the limbs on all of them is our biggest issue. It's all good. I love hearing the thought process that you guys do. It just gets your mind going thinking about it, and um sparking those little motors and getting everything rolling. Hey there, Julie Cleary. Glad you could join us. Thanks for coming in. Ah, nice. Okay. Good to know. Yeah. Whiskey and Sunshine Off Grid. Glad you could join us. We're going to be probably wrapping it up here in a little bit. It's getting close to my bedtime, and I know there's some other lives going on too. So, yeah, we have a few oops moments here, and that's another one. I'm gonna do another video about kind of building the infrastructure here too. Is sometimes we think it's an oops moment where we built something there for the chickens, but we want to do a barn over there eventually and have all the animals together. But again, we can't build the barn right away because we don't have the funds and it's not in the budget. We want to eventually get it there. So we're going to have to, we would have had to build the small one anyway to see us through those years when we don't have the barn. So sometimes you think it's an oops that you did something, and sometimes it works out that, you need to do it anyway to get through to what you eventually want to do. Yes. Yeah, you want to use like that kind of stuff, antifreeze, that sort of thing when you're doing those kinds of systems. Heats up, allows the heat to be transferred and doesn't freeze, especially if it's outside in our weather. Nice. That is awesome. Yeah, hopefully we'll get a lot of milk, and we haven't really looked into the cheese or the cream factor for it, but we're hoping we'll be able to do that with their milk. Ah, nice. See, some of that ingenuity is very cool and very interesting. Take care. Have a great night, eh? Yes, I do have clothes on. However, I'll probably get rid of them and might take another dip in the hot tub before I go to bed. All right, guys, I have made it to the bottom. I'm going to call it a night. I want to thank everyone for coming out, and thanks for the conversation and the great ideas and topics. Really appreciate all of you and all the comments, everything you've said, you being here. I'm really actually looking forward to doing some other discussions on solar, off grid, old equipment, that sort of stuff. It it's just so interesting learning about that kind of thing. It's awesome. So have a great night, everyone. Take care, be safe, and enjoy yourselves. Not enjoy living. Not like I said in, what was it, the shower one, where I said, and I enjoy myself in the hot tub. I don't really, well, I do. I enjoy the hot tub, but I don't enjoy myself in the, yeah, you know what I mean anyway. So enjoy yourselves and take care, guys. Love you guys.